AWS Lambda is AWS's flagship serverless technology. So by serverless, they mean that you don't have to manage any kind of server. So you don't manage any EC2 instances, any operating systems, anything like that. In fact, there's very little to manage at all. You literally just upload your code to Lambda. And Lambda is an event-driven service, which we'll learn about more in the next section. But what that means is your code sits on Lambda and it's executed whenever some kind of event happens. So an event becomes a trigger to execute your code. So for example, a developer would upload a zip file containing some code to AWS Lambda. And the code is then just sitting on Lambda. You're not paying anything for that until Lambda actually executes. And then you pay for the time it's executing and the amount of memory it uses. So an event will occur, and that can be through the CLI, through the API, through the SDK, and that's called a trigger. And the trigger then causes the code to execute. So you typically use it for code that's going to run for a short period of time. You can run your code for up to 15 minutes, but you might just have code that quickly executes and then completes. And in that case, it's really cheap. So you do pay for the amount of time that it's running and the amount of memory allocated to your Lambda function. And it can be incredibly cheap. So people run entire businesses off Lambda without paying anything. What we're going to do in a moment is actually head to the console and create a Lambda function. And it's going to be a simple hello world function. So we're going to run a test event, and then an event will be written to the CloudWatch Logs service. And we can then go into CloudWatch Logs and see the event that's been written there. To find Lambda, go to Services, Compute, and here's Lambda. And we don't have any functions at the moment, so we just choose Create Function. We're going to author from scratch. We can give it a function name. I'm just going to call this my first function. And now we get to choose the runtime. So Node.js 12 is the default. There's several other options here. We'll just stick with the default and continue. Now Lambda needs what's called an execution role. So that is the IAM role which Lambda uses to have rights and permissions to other services. By default, it will create a new role with basic Lambda permissions. And I'm okay with that for this test. So we can just choose Create Function. So we now have our function. And if you select this option here, it's by default it's selected, you then get to see the function code underneath. So in this case, we have a super simple bit of code. And all this is going to do is return the words hello from Lambda. If you head down the page a bit, you can see that you can set up environment variables, tags, and here you can specify the amount of memory that's allocated to your function. You can also have a timeout so that it will complete the function if a certain amount of time elapses. You can connect your functions to a VPC as well, and you can also connect file systems. Now concurrency is quite an important one. So this is the amount of concurrent executions of your function. So for example, if you have a function that processes images, then you might have lots of images being processed at the same time. So this determines the number of concurrent executions of your function, and they happen in parallel. So let's head back up to the top. We can also head over and see our permissions. So in here, we can actually click on the role, and that will show us the permissions that are being assigned to this function. So here's our role. We can see the policy here, and if we click on the policy, go to JSON, we can see the policy statement. So in this case, it allows us to write to the CloudWatch Logs service. We're able to create a log stream, put log events, and we're able to do so for this particular function. So that's what the IAM policy statement looks like. Back in our function, we also have monitoring. So you can see here the various CloudWatch metrics that are taken for your service. You can see the number of invocations and so on. So what we're going to do now is we're actually going to go back to configuration. We're going to delete all of this code, and we're going to add in some new code which is going to write events to CloudWatch Logs for us. Now in the course download, in the Lambda directory, you'll find this file write to CloudWatch Logs. So we just need to copy all of this code, come back, paste it in, and then click on save. And so that's saved our code. And this code will basically write the environment variables for our function to CloudWatch logs. We've now got to create a test event. So we click on test, leave hello world as the template. I'm going to call it test1. Click on create, and that's created our test event, which you can see here. Then we actually need to test it, so we run test. And what we've got here is a result of succeeded, so that's great, and it's green, which is all good. So if we look underneath, we've got quite a bit of information here about the running of our function, so the execution. We can see the duration in milliseconds, the amount of memory configured. We can see the build duration, so we're building 100 millisecond increments. And then we can see the log output here, so we can see what information has been put into CloudWatch logs, and there's quite a lot of data here. So what we can do now is head over to CloudWatch logs and we'll find this information. So click monitoring and then click on view logs in CloudWatch. And what you'll find here is we've got this log stream, and we're in our log group, by the way. So it creates a log group for our function, and then log streams are created within the group. So if we click on that, we've now got all this information for our execution. We can see a start, an end, and a report. And the report tells us a bit of information such as the billing information. We saw that in the console as well. But in the middle here, we've got these messages in the body. So this is the information that was logged to CloudWatch logs. So you can obviously write into your code that you want certain data recorded about the execution of your functions. If we go back to our function, we can just keep running this, and every time we run it, it's going to do the same thing. And then if we head back to CloudWatch and click on refresh, we'll see we now have lots of events coming through. So hopefully you can understand how powerful Lambda is. It's a very exciting technology. Because it's serverless, it means you don't have an underlying operating system to manage. You just put your code up and then pay only for the time it executes, so it's very affordable. And it's really good for event-driven architectures, which I explained some of the concepts about event-driven architectures earlier in the course. And for now, this was just an introduction to Lambda. Actually, in the next section where we look at loose coupling, we're also going to have an event-driven architecture configuration, and we're going to use Lambda more then.